I am here with Bentley's legendary Hall of Fame coach, Barbara Stevens, who is kind enough to join me today to discuss her career at the helm of the Falcons women's basketball team, a career that saw the program's first national championship in 2014 and culminating with an induction into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame this past month. And to name just a very few of your accolades, 16-time Northeast 10 Coach of the Year, an .818 career winning percentage at Bentley, 31 NCAA appearances, including 10 in the national semifinals, and WBCA Division II Coach of the Year 5 times. Coach, talk a little bit about where your love for basketball came from and what made you decide to get into coaching after college and then eventually come to Bentley in 1986.
Well, growing up in the 60s and 70s, I was always interested in sports and loved playing everything. When I got to high school, I was a three-sport athlete. And then when I went to Bridgewater State, I played basketball, tennis, and softball. At that time, you could easily do that kind of thing. But my real love became basketball. And as I played, I also grew to be extremely interested in the coaching side of the sport. In fact, while I was a student at Bridgewater, I would go to weekend coaching clinics put on by such legendary names as Bobby Knight and Denny Crum from Louisville, and a bunch of guys who were very, very, very well known in the sport and very good coaches. And that kind of triggered that love of the coaching aspect in me. I went to Bridgewater thinking I was going to be a high school teacher and coach. Then my first year out of Bridgewater, I ran into the women's athletic director at Clark University near my home in Southbridge. And we struck up a conversation, and I said, I'm home now. I would be happy to serve as an assistant coach if you had that position open or available or whatever. So she said, well, we don't at the time, but let me get back to you. And, a couple weeks later, she came back with an assistant women's basketball coaching position for $400. And I thought I had struck it rich. I said, oh my God, I will take it. And in the meantime, I was teaching at a local high school in my town. So I started off as a part-time assistant coach. The next year, the women's athletic director made me the head coach at age 23. So I was a head women's college basketball coach at Clark University at a very young age. And that's where I kind of started. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing early on. The young women I was coaching were about a year or two younger than me at the time. So that was an interesting dynamic for sure. But I was able to learn, a lot of trial and error for sure, but I was able to learn so much about basketball, the X's and O's, but also just dealing with young people at that time. So in 1986, Al Shields, who was the athletic director at Bentley, called me, and it was actually in August, and said, we have a position open, would you be interested? And I thought immediately, no, why would I do that? Why would I leave a Division I program to go to a Division II program, even though we were still trying to build the program at UMass? But I thought, I'm not sure I'm really interested. Well, he persisted and got me to come out for an interview. And the minute I walked on Bentley's campus and talked to the people here at Bentley, I was sold. And so I left my position at UMass in the fall of '86 and came to Bentley. And as you said, have been here for 34 years. Where has the time gone is what I say to myself. I can't believe it's already been that long. But yeah, it was pretty much a no-brainer for me, even though there was the, in my mind, the perception of dropping down in this profession. coaching at the Division I level, which is seemingly what everyone aspires to. But I realized very quickly that Bentley had the best balance of what I was looking for. We had scholarships. We had a wonderful education to offer. It was close to the Boston area. And so, you know, again, for me, it was a comfortable decision. And now, you know, looking back, I'm probably the best decision I've ever made.
Well, we're certainly glad you made that decision too, because we love having you at Bentley. Those 5 straight Final Four trips, appearance in the 1990 championship game, back in the Elite Eight from 1996 through 1999. And I know you touched upon this a bit, but just that rising stature nationally during that stretch where you kind of, you know, more or less Bentley's program, women's basketball, was nationally known at this point.
Right. It has always been my philosophy to play the best schedule that we could play. And at that time, our athletic administration supported that. So we traveled all over the country during the regular season to play games.
Wow.
And we would try to play the best teams that we could. We traveled to North Dakota a couple times. We went to Florida and played in a preseason Disney tournament that invited like the top teams in the country. It was an 8-team tournament. We did that, I want to say 2 or 3 times at least. It was my goal to get our program out there and get our program known. We actually won that Disney tournament one year. And it was, I'm going to say it was not necessarily it was a goal. It was a goal for us to be known, but it just kind of happened. It just kind of evolved. And all of a sudden, you know, through scheduling, I think national scheduling, and then being able to participate in these Final Fours, Bentley women's basketball was put on the map.
And then you also appeared in Coach Stevens' first of many Final Fours that she would go to. Can you talk about how special that season was for you individually, and then also just as for the team?
But that first year, we went to Delta State in Mississippi, and it was amazing. We had tremendous support from not only administration, but our families came. It was so fun. I still, to this day, can see that girl making that foul line jumper in double overtime. She was an All-American, and you know that was Cal Poly Pomona. I'll never forget it. But we came back the next night and won, and that experience at the Final Four was just something that we knew we were getting back to. It just fueled us. It fueled our program, and we were going to get back to the Final Four. We wanted a national championship. So that first year was so special in so many levels.
During your time, Coach Stevens touched on some of the uniqueness in the schedule years ago, which they really don't have today, where you would play a lot of non-conference games against some premier opponents across the country. Can you speak to what those games meant for your teams to play with these higher profile games as a way to prepare yourselves for the playoffs, where you would ultimately be playing these elite teams?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great to be able to play these elite teams early in the season, especially because the Northeast 10, I mean, the competitiveness that is in this conference is unbelievable. And so I felt like being able to play those teams early on definitely prepared us for the type of intense play that we were going to have during the regular season and definitely in playoffs. So, and of course, being able to travel was just added to the experience.
Jumping forward a little bit, starting in 2010, your teams had another amazing stretch of seasons, ultimately culminating with that national championship in 2014.
Right.
I know you touched a little bit on the recruiting aspect with your assistant coaches, but that time period in particular, can you touch upon how that recruiting was broken down, how you got those special group of individuals together on the recruiting aspect of things?
But in those times, so from 10 to 14, we had, and that was C. White. C. White was our number one assistant and recruiter. We were able to continue to get some very, very good players. the years that led up to the national championship, and again, it's like you look back and you just say, man, that, you know, it was luck, but it was also kind of, again, another goal to get these particular players in our program. The other situation that helped us was we had a couple of transfers that came in, and we, you know, we kind of gambled a little bit because we knew that when we offered these kids some scholarships, we would kind of be lacking at the end when they all graduated. We were kind of be in a little bit of trouble, but we decided, okay, these are special players and we're going to go for it. And it turned out that the year that, you know, the years leading up to 2014, we were in the regional final at Bentley in 2013 against Malloy. And I mean, that was a game that, you know, was the biggest disappointment, I think, of our lives, of my career. We should have won that game. It was winnable. And I don't mean that, there's no disrespect to Malloy, because they beat us and then they advanced to the national championship game. They had a great team. But it was almost like we had been the best team all year long. We get to host the regional tournament. It's all pretty much laid out for us. And we end up losing in a very disappointing fashion, you know, right at the end of the game. But what that kind of fueled our fire, if you will, in 2013. We had a tremendous group of seniors in 2014. Courtney Finn, Christiana Bakolas, Jackie Brugliera, Callie Kroll, Tyler Parker Kimball, the biggest one, I think, and the biggest name, Crystal Guarine, sorry. And then the biggest name, obviously, was Lauren Battista. And I think when we actually got her to commit to us 4 years previous, that was a kind of the start of it all. That class was exceptional. It was just exceptional. They're so versatile, so very, very good, so smart, and absolutely driven. And I think the loss in 2013 just made it even more. So it was just such a goal and a mission for those kids. And, you know, we went 35-0 and won the national championship with that group. I'm not sure we expected that, but I could see it along the way. I could see that this was a possibility for that group.
All right, so that championship game, that amazing comeback your team had, can you just walk us through those last few minutes and then describe what it was finally like to get that elusive national championship that, you know, you so deserved and all your success that you had?
We were struggling, and we got to the point where we were down 9 with about 5 or 6 minutes to go. And a kid had hit a big 3. We called a timeout, and the momentum was clearly in their favor. And it ended up that I think that's when we kind of kicked it into gear. It was now or never, and we put our press on, and it seemed to really rattle them. And all of a sudden, you know, 9-point lead got to 6 and to 5 and 4, and all of a sudden it's a 3-point game with 3 minutes to go. And that's again where the press started really paying off for us. And you know, the film clips are just so great of that last 3 minutes where Battista gets a steal on an inbound pass, and BAKOLAS gets a steal on an inbound pass, and we trap and we get a steal and a timeout out of it. And all of a sudden we find ourselves up, you know, and I just remember sitting on the bench, and it's now under a minute, and we have what I thought might be a unbeatable lead at that point, but you know, obviously nothing's done until it's done. And I remember just sitting there thinking to myself, they can't catch up now, can they? You know, and hoping against hope that would be the case. But It indeed was. We hit some very, very clutch. Courtney Finn, again, clutch free throws down the stretch. Lauren Battista hit a big 3 during that stretch, that often inbound play that, you know, I just, these are all memories that I have, vivid memories of coming back and winning that game. And when the final horn went off, I mean, I really couldn't believe it at that time. I remember just looking up to the sky and thinking about my dad and just being like, what just happened here? You know, I mean, we were definitely in the grip of defeat. And then all of a sudden now, you know, we win the game by 7. So it was unbelievable. It was just so unbelievable. And I was so happy for that team, because that's, you know, they put that in the forefront of their minds during the entire season, but they took each game one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But you could tell where they were going. I mean, that train was moving towards the championship game, and you know, and they just, you know, they willed it. They willed themselves to that championship. Now, don't get me wrong; they're extremely talented, but they were not to be denied.
Erie, Pennsylvania will forever be one of my favorite places in the country. Yeah, that national championship game, it was a tough one all around. We were playing a really good West Texas A&M team, and it was a very even match. I mean, it was back and forth. Halftime, it was a tie score. You know, it was a close game the whole way. And then late in the second half, they pulled away. I think it got up to about 9 points at one point that they had a lead on us. And, you know, we didn't give up, though. There was no sense of quitting or feeling bad for ourselves at that point. We kept playing hard. And the next thing you know, it turned really fast. It turned, you know, 6 points in 13 seconds fast. You know, we joke about it. You know, sometimes we're like, I don't even remember what happened, because, you know, it just happened so quick. And the next thing you know, we're in a tie game, and we made some plays down the stretch, and we finished the way we wanted to. And, you know, that buzzer went off, and it was just a pure sense of joy. You know, it was joy for my teammates, for Coach Stevens, for the program to, you know, finally get that national championship win. Was just, you know, a feeling that you're never going to forget.
What does that mean to you personally? And then also, what did that mean giving Coach Stevens that first championship win?
To give Coach Stevens her first national championship, something she's been so close to in the past. And, you know, her accolades speak for themselves, of course, but to give her something of that nature that she had not achieved before, it just was the cherry on top of the cake. You know, we'll forever have that bond. And, you know, not only our team, but those who are in attendance, the alumni that came before us, and paved the way for that moment. It was truly just, it was so special. And even now, years removed, it never loses that excitement and that just, you know, pride that we have.
So then 2 years later, you're back in the Final Four again, and you got basically an entirely different team. You know, you get GEMMA back. She was a freshman in 2014. All of a sudden, you're back at the highest level after losing all those talented players. So how did you manage to get back there that quickly with that kind of turnover?
Well, as I said to you, we kind of put a lot of our eggs in one basket for that 2014 team with scholarship money, and we lost 7 seniors on that team. So we had recruited, you know, some what we felt were very good freshmen, but they were still freshmen. So in the year following the national championship team, we really struggled. Our poor freshmen were put in situations that I don't think they were ready for. Jen Gemma was, you know, her freshman year played a big role on our team. Sophomore year, now she has to step up more. You know, we were playing with players that had not gotten a lot of playing time the previous year. So we really struggled. That was our year where we were sub 500, and you know, it was tough. You were at the top of the mountain one year, and now you don't even make your conference playoffs the next year. So but we understood that could have been a possibility. However, again, with, I think, strong recruiting, and you know, some seasoning of our younger players, in 2016 we were able to get back to the Elite Eight, And again, a team that was young, but had some really key players that really pulled us through.
Making it to the Final Four my freshman year just made me understand, like, it's not easy to do that, and it kind of was my motivation and drive for my following 3 years. But definitely as a freshman, like, it was amazing. Like, I didn't play that much, but the experience was awesome. Like, I loved watching my teammates and cheering my teammates on there, and yeah, the whole experience was just so cool. And like, if anyone asked me like top 5 memories from all my 4 years, it would definitely be going to the Final Four my freshman year.
All right, onto some individual stuff. I know you like talking about your team a lot too, but I want to get into
Yeah,
some
can we
of the.
keep talking about them, Mark?
I know, but we got to talk about a little bit of some of your great accomplishments here. So starting with this one, January 17th, 2008, a little over 2 years ago now, you became one of only 6 coaches to amass 1,000 career victories with a win over Adelphi. Was this something you could have ever imagined when you started coaching?
You know, I told another interviewer when that particular occasion happened that my goal was never to win 1,000 games. It was just to win the next game. You know, we've always been, I think, as a staff, we've always been very focused on the next game and how we can best prepare our team for that next game. And again, I'm going to go back to, I've had wonderful, talented, smart assistant coaches and obviously exceptional players. So when you know, for me, it's always been a one game at a time thing. And all of a sudden now you get to that point where they're telling you that, oh, you know, you could reach this coaching milestone. And I'm just like, again, like I said to you earlier, how did that happen? You know, how did those things come about? When I guess because you never look at it, you never focus on it. I never focused on it. You know, yeah, I've been so fortunate in my career that, you know, number one, I've stayed in it this long, but number two, you know, all the pieces have kind of fit. And so there I was on the verge and it happened. So.
Can you just share a few things that you've learned coaching under Coach Stevens that maybe you didn't know or kind of experience when you were a player under her?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would be the preparation and the attention to detail, the precision with which she does everything. There's no minute wasted in a day. She doesn't cut corners. And when you're a player, you don't really realize that you just come to practice, you go through practice, you leave. You don't realize what happened before practice. You don't realize what's continuing to happen during practice. You don't realize what happens after practice. There's so much preparation, so much preparedness. You know, sometimes it seems like Coach Stevens looks like a new coach in the way that she makes sure that everything is precise and detailed. And that translates down to us as coaches and down to our players as well.
All right, now about 6 weeks ago, April 4th, second year nomination on the ballot. You're inducted, I should say, into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. The same year as NBA greats late Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and Tim Duncan. How surreal was that to get that call?
We were supposed to get the call between 3 and 5 on the 3rd of April. And so 3 o'clock came and okay, just kind of waiting. And then 3:10 comes and I'm like, okay, it should be coming any moment now. And then 3:15 came and I said, okay, well, I got a little bit further this year, at least on the list of, you know, thanks, but no thanks. And then at 3:20, he called me. And all I remember were the first words out of his mouth were congratulations. And I lost it. And I got very emotional. I was very stunned though, because who gets in the Hall of Fame? Certainly not me. and yet, and again, with the names, the greats of the game and the greats of coaching and the great players, you know, I never expected it, never. And when he said that, like I said, I was in a state of shock.
All right, final question, back onto a team thing. If you could sum up your career in a few sentences, what has been your consistent motivation to always get the best out of your players?
So one of my sayings and one of my philosophies has always been, get to know the person first before you coach the athlete. And I've kind of lived by that, I guess. And that brings me the most joy and the most reward when our alums will, you know, keep coming back, stay in touch, get invited to weddings, get invited to, you know, events, big events for them, and you know, and have been there for them, I hope, in good times and in bad. And that's what it's all about for me. You know, that right there, that's what it's all about, is knowing that we've had special relationships and continue to do so, even though, you know, some of our players now are 50 years old, and they have families of their own, and they have kids going to college, and it's like, oh God, how did this happen? Where has the time gone? But I really, that's probably the most special part of my career.
Just such a great quality to have, just, you know, getting the most out of those players and getting to know them on a personal level. You know, it's basketball is one side of it, but getting to know the person, making lifelong friends. I mean, it's such a great to have all those connections that you've made. Well, thank you very much for joining me again today, Coach, to conclude our video with the most recent news regarding your career, that you have decided to retire from coaching after 44 remarkable years, 34 of those here at Bentley. So first off, a couple of questions right off the bat. Heading into this spring, was this something that was on your mind all along, or something that developed over time during the off season? And what ultimately made you decide that this, in fact, was the right time for you to step down from coaching?
You know, whenever anyone had asked me about, so when do you think you're going to retire? I would say, you know, I'll know it when the time comes. I will, you know, I will feel that, that maybe I just can't be the coach or have the amount of energy that is needed, at least for me anyway, to run the program. And of course, with the COVID-19 and the quarantine and safer at home policies, I did have a lot of time to think. I had a lot of time to reflect, and it just, you know, I just knew it. I knew it in my heart that it was the right time. So.
So how did it feel knowing that you were passing off the program to C. White, someone who has played for you 4 years and then also coached alongside you for almost 2 decades?
It was so special for me to be able to see one of our own get promoted to the head coaching position. She has, you know, she's a product of our program. She's been a student athlete. She's been an assistant coach, associate head coach, and now she is the head coach. And number one, I couldn't feel more comfortable and confident that our program is in great hands. She will do a fantastic job. And I think the fact that it is one of our own who has worked so hard and earned the right to be the head coach, you know, it makes me feel great.
What was going through your mind, and what are you looking forward to most now being at the helm of the program?
Well, for starters, it's such a privilege just to be a part of this Bentley family, the women's basketball family, whether you're a player, you know, on the court, or you're on the coaching staff. So to be able to be, you know, the head coach of this program is such an honor. I really look forward to continuing the Bentley way and all that she's instilled in me as a player and as a coach. And to be the one to be able to be responsible for that gives me great pride, and I'm extremely excited.
But what your reaction was to hearing the news that Coach had in fact retired? Was it something you were expecting to come soon, whether the next year or two, or was it a bit shocking that it happened this year?
Well, I mean, I think these are just absolutely crazy times. And, like we were talking, I've been in athletics and I understand what you guys are up against. And so in some ways it was shocking, but it really wasn't. I mean, if you give 44 years of your life to the mentorship of young women in sport, I'm just absolutely over the moon for her. I'm so excited for her to take a pause and for her to just, figure out what next adventure of excellence that she's going to create, because she will. And whatever she does, I'm just really excited for her.
What was your reaction to hearing the news just this past week that Coach had in fact retired and stepped down from the position at Bentley?
And I think you never want to see a legend leave the game. But at this time, she's had so many amazing milestones, Final Four appearances, a national championship, with which most of my class went out to Erie, Pennsylvania and saw, selection into the 2020 Basketball Hall of Fame. I'm right next to Springfield, Mass. We had many calls with her about preparing for that and what we could do to make that a special time for her here out in Springfield. And if I were to be honest, I think it's just a great time for her to think about the other adventures in her life. After giving 44 years to the sport, we connect with her often. We were up at Lori King's house in Maine last summer, and she came up. So we see her a lot outside of basketball. She's always made that connection. And of course, you don't want to ever see someone leave, but I'm very, very happy for her and happy for her to move on to new adventures in her life. And we told her she needs to get a much better golf game. So
so a funny time to work on that now. Huh.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to receiving the news that Coach was stepping down from the head coach position, and then how great was it to hear that it would be in fact Coach White, who was assistant while you were playing, was stepping into that role for her?
Bittersweet. It was such a bittersweet feeling, and I won't get into necessarily how I found out, but in that moment, I remember looking at some of the faces of some former players that I've played with, and I could see the sadness, but immediately following the news, coming from Coach directly to say she was stepping down and to hear Coach in C, was stepping in. It's such a bittersweet feeling because you feel like the legacy continues. The legacy continues. C gets it. She knows what it takes. She's played under Coach before, just as a lot of us have. So again, it's such a bittersweet feeling, but I know C's ready. This is her time now.
So, SHEVON, you had a great career at Bentley, 2005 graduate of the program, women's basketball, including an all-ECAC Division II and NE10 first-team selection, not to mention a trip to the national semifinals in 2003. You were a transfer from Norwich. What was it about Bentley and Coach Stevens that led you to becoming a Falcon?
So as I started doing my research and reaching out to Coach Stevens, I was just in awe of the program that she had built there. And when I actually visited the campus, my dad was in the military, in the Army. He was stationed overseas. So my parents actually flew back to the States and accompanied me on the visit to Bentley. And I'll never forget this. My dad said to my mom, which I found out later, like, I will do anything to get SHEVON into Bentley. So he was just not only Bentley from an academic standpoint, being one of the best business schools in the country, but just the program that Coach Stevens had built. She is such a fierce competitor, but yet so compassionate. And she really cares about her players, and she cares about them not only on the court, but off the court as well. And with my parents being so far away, that was something that was really important to them, that I had that support system there. And she's always been there for me. And she, in fact, just called me a couple weeks ago to check in on me.
You received your MBA from Bentley, and you actually mentioned this in an article that how much that prepared you for your career. And in fact, Coach Stevens brought you back to speak to her team a few years ago about work ethic and what it takes to succeed, as you were incredibly successful as the president and COO of Stonewall Kitchen, and now the chief executive officer of Annie Selke. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I would define my leadership around what Coach Stevens helped develop, and from what I was able to glean from her leadership, and you know, empowering people to be better and to want to be better, creating that sense of you work hard and you get success, respecting people, communicating with people. Those are the things that I definitely personally gained most from in my development at Bentley. Academically, technically, those are the things you always have, but the ethical morality around how to lead and the commonsensicalness of it, she displayed it every day. So we were together 3, 4, 5 hours a day. So for 4 years, or 3 years for my case.
Oh, it was such an honor to speak on behalf of the alumni at the dedication of the Barbara Stevens Court. I love and I respect Coach Stevens so much. So the opportunity to talk about her greatness and publicly thank her is such a treat. It was an amazing day. And to be able to highlight her personal qualities. I think people know Coach Stevens as a professional. They know her numbers, they know her excellence, but just to be able to talk about how humble she is, how determined she is, how she's worked for absolutely everything that she's gotten, was a highlight, in my basketball career, for sure. I loved being a part of it, and it was super special.
How did your time at Bentley kind of influence your decision to eventually become a coach and continue being a coach to this day?
I had an awesome experience at Bentley, on and off the floor, and grew as a person, as a basketball player, as a leader. And it was just important for me to hopefully be able to pass that on to the players that I coached, hopefully have even a little bit of an impact that Coach Stevens had on me. And, obviously basketball-wise, I gained a lot of knowledge, but just, culture-wise and building a program of excellence, I learned a lot, and just wanted to, give back to the players that I coached, and hopefully they have a positive experience like I had at Bentley.
How much did impact did Coach have on your transition from high school into the college game?
Yeah, so Coach really took me to that next level in my game. As I developed, and every athlete develops as a player, the primary focus is usually on the physical skill sets and improving on that aspect of the game. Ball handling, shooting, passing, rebounding, defense. However, when I got to college, all of the women at that level had developed as talented players with talented skill sets. And Coach the mental side of the game, and really took working on my basketball IQ, and elevating that so that I was no longer just a player on the court, but I was a player and another coach on the court.
We found out that Coach Stevens was selected to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. What were some of the thoughts that went through your head, and what did it mean knowing that she reached this level?
She's so humble and modest, and that's something that I think so many of us respect about her. It's definitely nice to see it like on the news and on social media, and just knowing that everybody knows this now. Everyone knows how talented and successful she is. So she deserves all the accolades, all the attention. I'm so happy for her.
You witnessed a lot of Coach Stevens' big accomplishments during your time as a Falcon. You played in her 1,000th career victory. You saw the court being named after her, and then most notably, as you just mentioned, her induction into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. What did seeing Coach achieve all of this mean to you?
every day we have practice, and she'd say, oh, don't worry about that name on the floor. Like, just, it used to be the NE10, and it would be her kind of point to say, go stand on the wing, stand further off the 3-point line. And when it changed to her name, it was like, oh, just go over there. So, I mean, I've seen how humble you can be, but also how, like, she deserves to be celebrated. And I think to be a part of a lot of this, you know, one part of it is to be grateful to the alums that have also kind of paved the path for us and upheld the standards in the way that coaches coached them and taught them how to be not just basketball players, but good people and good women. And as I actually said in our end of year team banquet, I can brag about her Hall of Fame induction and all of these things for her for the next years to come. So, I mean, it's amazing.
On behalf of myself and the Bentley Athletic Department, I would like to sincerely thank everyone who participated in the Coach Stevens video. From the early years to the beginning of the nationally known dynasty, to the national championship, Hall of Fame induction, and now the retirement, you all played such an amazing role in making this program so successful. I truly hope you have enjoyed this video and got an even better sense on how unique the Bentley women's basketball program has been under the outstanding guidance of Coach Stevens.